My Father's Place, proclaiming Jesus Christ to the world. Good morning and welcome to My Father's Place. I have to tell you, I'm doing this whole book of John so you would come to know who Jesus is, because so many who are in the church are being taught another Jesus, and you do not know the Jesus of this Bible. So, who Jesus is. Today, we are speaking of who Jesus is, the resurrection and the life. He speaks it in that order for a reason, and I'll speak to that as soon as I pray. But you can go to John 11 right now. Lord Jesus, I remember when you resurrected me from the deadness of my sin and filled me with your life. That's what this is really all about. And Lazarus is just a picture of it. So thank you that as you have opened this to me, I will open this to those who watch and those who read on the blog. So Lord, I just pray it would open blind eyes so they would see the real Jesus, you. I pray this in your name. Amen. So, I tell you the truth. As I said, I opened my eyes. He resurrected me. I caught a glimpse of him. I went after him. He resurrected me from the deadness of my sin. From Ephesians 2:1 and elsewhere. And then, in that same moment of time, he filled me with his life. That's why, when he speaks of being the resurrection and the life, he does it in that order, because that's the order in which things must be done, because he must clean you up on the inside before he and the Father and the Spirit come in to fully and permanently indwell you. So, that's the first thing to know. So he sent me to exhort and warn you from this passage and from everything that I do. I'm not here to tell you a cute little story. I'm here to break down some falsehoods that are taught about this passage. And I'm here to tell you that you must, he says, you must do as I did. I pray you catch a glimpse of him today so you would run after him with all that is in you. And he would certainly resurrect you from the deadness of your sin and fill you with his life, just as he did with me. Glory to God. He says this to those who disobey him and disregard this idea of being filled with God. I don't need that, I hear that. He says, you do not love me, although you may, some of you may, be fond of me, may think, oh, I just love Jesus, but you don't love him with his love. And he would do that if you were resurrected from the deadness of your sin and filled with his life. He says, you do not love me, some of you are fond of me, but you do not believe. If you reject these words, you do not believe. He says, because you disobey me. So, in this passage, unbelief again is evident in Jesus Christ's disciples, in Mary and Martha, and whom he visited often when he was in Jerusalem, because it was just 2 miles outside of Jerusalem. So they were fond of him, and what I mean by that is they did not love him with agape love. They couldn't, because that was not available to them yet. Not until he died, rose, ascended, was glorified, poured out his Spirit, and those who obey him are filled with his agape. So they loved him as a friend. That's what phileo means. And so they loved him as a friend. They were fond of him. It was in Mary, it was in Martha, in everything that they said, because they were filled with unbelief. You'll see it. What he asks you is, since he has died and risen and ascended and been glorified and poured out his Spirit. Why have you not obeyed him? So you would love him with his love rather than being fond of him and being willing to disobey him because you think you don't need that. Why? And I tell you the truth, some of you who call yourself the church are not his church. Some of you will even say to me, and really think you believe it, that he is the Christ, the Son of God. If he is the Christ, the Son of God, why don't you obey him when he says, stay in the city until you are inwardly clothed with power from on high? Why do you not obey him when he says, wait for the promise of the Father, the baptism of the Holy Spirit? His disciples couldn't do anything until that happened, and neither can you. And it wasn't until then that they loved him with his love instead of friendship love. So how do I know that many of you have not believed him? You have read this passage before. Oh, that's great. He's the resurrection and the life. He rose from the dead, and now I have life in him. If that is true of you, why are you still sinning? You don't believe because you haven't done what he has commanded you to do. If you did it, he would clean you up on the inside. You wouldn't sin anymore. You would cease from sin so as to live the rest of your life in the body for the will of God and not for the lusts of men. So, you're still dead in your sin. You're still dead in your sin. You don't have his life in you. Unless you have obeyed him. And if you believe him, if you really believe Jesus, you will obey him. If you believe really that he is the Christ, the Son of God, you will obey him. So, in John 11:25 through 26, Jesus told Mary, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies. I'm going to jump to 26. Do you believe this? And what he wanted to get across to them was that through what he would do in their brother Lazarus, raising him from the dead, they would know that he is God the Son. They would see the glory of God, and Jesus Christ would be glorified by it, because they would then have their eyes open, and they would be among those who stayed and waited in the book of Acts until they were filled with the Holy Spirit. You who continue to disobey him and say that it is not necessary, you judge him. I will continue to show you that. Who are you to tell him that something he commands you to do is not necessary? You judge him. So, as a result, God's glory is not seen in you, and Jesus Christ is not glorified through you, period. I don't care if you have been to seminary and have a lot of numbers and letters and everything else to say how wonderfully smart you are in the Word of God. I don't care who you are. If you disobey him in this, and you think that head knowledge is enough, then you need to repent. Because it is not. You must have him in you. That is the only way that God's glory is seen through you, and that Jesus Christ is glorified by it. So these are not my words, but his. Listen, everything that I've told you so far, he says in this passage. John 11:1 through 4. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was the Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sisters sent word to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. But when Jesus heard this, he said, this sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. When they said, Lord, behold, he whom you love, the word again is phileo. They're not in a place yet where agape is shared between him and them. He was fond of Lazarus. Do not twist these words, you evil people in pulpits, saying he has a homosexual relationship. No. This is friendship. So he said to them and sent word to them, as you will see as we go along, did I not tell you? In verse 40 and elsewhere. Did I not tell you? Did I not tell you this very thing? But when Jesus heard this, that Lazarus was sick, he said, this sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God is glorified by it. So Mary was fond of Jesus, even to the point where she anointed his feet with oil and wiped his feet with her hair, and she worshiped him. But she didn't believe him, and she judged him. You will see it. So this sickness would not end in death. And you will say, oh, but in this passage, Lazarus died. It didn't end with his death. It didn't. He went on to raise him. So Jesus doesn't lie. So if you will obey him, you will be raised from the dead. Your sin-sick heart will not result in you dying forever in hell. The resurrection and the life will resurrect you from the deadness of your sin, so that your sin sickness is wiped away and you are raised up, just as Lazarus was. No matter how long you've been in your grave, it's not too hard for him, and he will fill you with his life. So, but will you believe? Mary and Martha will show you they did not believe. Even though Martha confessed that he was the Christ, the Son of God. Yes, I believe this. John 11:5 through 8. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he then stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again? Oh, he loved him, so he stayed 2 days longer before going to this man who was sick even unto death? Absolutely. He was obeying the Father's instructions. He was going to do something that would reveal the glory of God and also glorify him. He stayed 2 days longer on purpose. You will see why, but I'll give you a brief hint. The Jews had understood, this is not in the word, but they understood that if somebody had been dead in a tomb 4 days, it was impossible to raise their spirit up from the dead. So Jesus loved Martha and Mary. Why didn't he just get right up and rush to them? Because God's plan was for him to wait until it was impossible to raise Lazarus. See? Oh, he'll do that. He'll do that with you. He did that with me. I looked impossible to raise, but he raised me. So he was not wrong to wait. But you will hear them say, you should have been here sooner, judging him. So, John 11:9, Jesus answered, because the disciples had said, you're going back there? They want to stone you. Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. This he said, and after that he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go so that I may awaken him out of sleep. So, what does he mean by this? He means that his disciples are going to stumble at what he says. They are already saying, why are you going back there? They're going to stumble over what he means by Lazarus being asleep. They're going to stumble saying, oh, well, we'll go back and die with him. You'll see it. They lived in natural light, so they did not see the light of the world. They loved Jesus as a friend, as a companion, as a rabbi, as a teacher. They did not see the light of the world who was before them. They saw this Jesus who they followed. So they stumbled over what he was about to do because they did not have his light in them yet. You will stumble too if you continue to live in natural light. You will stumble over his words. You will say that's a hard saying. You will want to cancel out certain parts of the Bible because you don't like them. All of it's true. You will say your biggest stumbling is that you do not need what he says you must have. Therefore, you have judged him and you have stumbled. Even if you are fond of him, as his disciples were, you'll judge him, saying, I don't need that. I hear it all the time. That was just for the apostles. That's just for certain people. That's not for everyone. It's for every single person who claims the name of Jesus Christ. So they thought, he's just fallen asleep. Listen. John 11:12, the disciples then said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought he was speaking of literal sleep. So Jesus then said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead. Verse 15, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, so you may believe. So you may believe. But let us go to him. And then here we go, another stumbling. Verse 16, therefore Thomas, who is called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, let us also go, so that we may die with him. How honorable he is. He does not understand what Jesus is going to do. He says, Lazarus is dead. I'm glad he's dead. What kind of a friend is Jesus? He's glad he's dead because he needed to be dead in order for Jesus to raise him from the dead. You're dead in your sins. You have to be that way. You have to understand that you are that and go to him, and then he'll raise you up. Glory to God. Can you imagine how harsh Jesus was? I'm glad he's dead. He was on a mission the whole time he was on this earth to glorify the Father, to reveal the glory of God, and to be glorified by what God told him to do. He and the Father planned it that way. He knew that Lazarus was dead. He had not heard that Lazarus was dead. No one had come and said Lazarus is dead. He knew he was dead. How? He's God the Son. Even on the earth, he had divine power and divine knowledge. So, 11:17, so when Jesus came, he found he had already been in the tomb 4 days. 18, now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. Martha, therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him, but Mary stayed at the house with the mourners. Everyone was weeping. Oh, you've lost your brother. Oh, how terrible. Well, Lazarus had been in the tomb 4 days. The significance of that, as I told you in the beginning, is that the Jewish thought was if somebody had been in a tomb more than 3 days, it was absolutely, entirely impossible to raise them from the dead. He had been in the tomb. He wanted him to be in the tomb 4 days so that he would do the impossible and they would know it. Every one of them, including the Jewish leaders who hated him. It's just according to his father's instructions. So, John 11:21 and 22. Martha then judged Jesus. Martha then said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. If you had been here, he had sent to them, saying, this sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God is glorified by it. He had sent them word. And yet, oh, if you'd been here, he wouldn't have died because you would have healed him. He should have come sooner. I will show you that Mary and Martha, who were close to Jesus, and the disciples who were close to Jesus, continued not to believe until Lazarus was raised by Jesus Christ. Even after he reminded Martha that he had sent that message to her and her sister, they still persisted. The sickness would not end in death. Was he lying? No. Would not end in death. He would die, but it would not end in death because he would raise him up and he would be alive. Glory to God. John 11:24, Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day, because Jesus had said, your brother will rise again in 23. So in 24, she says, oh yeah, I know that he will be raised in the last day. Verse 25, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies. Verse 26, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? This is the question he asks her. Do you believe I'm the resurrection and the life, and that whoever believes in me will never die? They'll have eternal life in them, and they will go to him when their body falls away. Do you believe this? Her answer was a non-answer. Do you believe that I am the resurrection and the life? She answers in 27, yes, Lord, I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. And yet she has said, you should have been here earlier. If she really believed he was the Christ, the Son of God, who came into the world, would she have questioned him? Is there anything God cannot do? No. But she did not believe. Although she said, and really believed this, that he is the Christ, the Son of God. It's just, this is too hard for God. So, impossible even for him. Again, she judged him. John 11:28. When she had said this, she went away and called Mary, her sister, saying secretly, the teacher is here and calling for you. Verse 29. And when she heard it, she got up quickly and was coming to him. So, Martha lied. Jesus had not called for Mary to come. But when Martha gave Mary that message, it was enough to make her get right up and go right in the middle of the morning time and come to him. John 11:30. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and consoling her, when they saw that Mary got up quickly and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to weep there. Listen to Mary's unbelief, though she was very fond of him. Do you see this? You can be very fond of him and still not believe him. John 11:32. Here's what Mary says. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Did he not send them a message saying this sickness will not end in death? But here he was dead. Verse 33, when Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled. Everybody said, oh, he was so sad because he loved Lazarus. I hear this preached this way all the time. Oh, he loved Lazarus, and he was just so stirred up inside. He was snorting with anger is what the original Greek to English word means. He snorted with anger over their unbelief. The whole bunch of them, the Jews who wept with her. Mary and Martha, if you'd been here, he wouldn't have died. He was deeply moved with anger and snorted. Verses 34, and said, where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Unbelief. I tell you, unbelief always results in judgment. You will judge him, and if you do not repent, he will judge you when you stand before him in the day of judgment. John 11:35, Jesus wept. Oh, he was so sad that Lazarus had died. No, once again he was weeping over their unbelief. Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. So when he wept, oh, see how Jesus loved him. He was weeping over their unbelief. He had told them. And both Mary and Martha had said, Lord, you should have been here. He weeps over your unbelief too, I tell you the truth. He does. You give him great grief in his heart by saying you don't need what he says you must have. If you believed him, if you believed that he is the Christ, the Son of God, really, you wouldn't take a moment to make the decision to obey him, because you end up choosing that. That's your choice, to obey. He weeps over your unbelief. You say he can't raise you up from the deadness of your sin, purify your heart, crucify your sin nature, and then fill you with his life, fill you with the Father and the Son and the Spirit, permanently, fully filled with God. You say he cannot do that. But he died and rose and ascended and was glorified and poured out the Spirit to any who would believe it. But you have not believed, so you have not received what he says you must have. Therefore repent. John 11:38, so Jesus again, deeply moved within, again snorting with anger, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Verse 39, Jesus said, remove the stone. Martha, the sister of the deceased, said to him, another unbelief, a word of unbelief. She said to him, Lord, by this time there will be a stench, for he has been dead 4 days. All she could see was the natural. He had said this would not end in death, and they did not believe him. She said, don't roll that stone away from the tomb. The stink will just come forth from his rotting body. Ugh. So he commanded that the stone be removed, and everybody says, oh no, he's dead for a long time. You can't do that. John 11:40, it's like they never heard and never read his message. John 11:40, Jesus said to her, did I not say to you that if you believe you will see the glory of God? Verse 41, so they removed the stone. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But because of the people standing around, I said it so they may believe that you sent me. He didn't have to pray aloud to the Father. He and the Father already knew what he was going to do. But he said these words so the people would believe that God is his Father by what he was about to do. So when he said, did I not say to you, he was rebuking her. He had sent word, the sickness would not end in death. She says, oh, it's going to stink if you open the tomb. He's been dead 4 days. 11:43. When he said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. The man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with a cloth. Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. Ha! Well, that sickness didn't end in death, did it? Jesus wasn't lying. They were all judging him because it didn't look like it was possible. But with God, all things are possible, beloved. Even cleaning up someone like me on the inside and filling me with God, and he'll do the same for you if you will just believe him. Glory to God. He came forth. And what was the reaction when everybody saw it? John 11:45, therefore many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw what he had done believed in him. See, it's for the glory of God that the Son of God may be glorified. The glory of God was seen when he just spoke, and Lazarus had to be raised up. And all he has to do is say a word. Glory. 46. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them the things which Jesus had done. Now, why would they do that? Why would they go and report him? I think some of them were plants. Some of them were just there to see what Jesus was going to do so they could run back to the leaders and say, oh, he did this. And their reporting him revealed their unbelief. Here they were. They saw Jesus speak, and Lazarus had to come out. So it was unbelief. They were spiritually dead. Just as it is for you. Just as it is for you. You are spiritually dead. And you will not be raised up and filled with his life unless you repent. John 11:47. Therefore the chief priests and the Pharisees convened a council and were saying, "What are we doing? For this man is performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, all men will believe in him." Now get this. "And the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." Oh, they were more concerned about losing their status than offending God. Oh, they were deeply troubled. This is not good news. They didn't worship him. They didn't see the glory of God in it. They didn't glorify Jesus Christ for doing it. No, they began to plot and plan how to kill him. And you who refuse to believe Jesus are the same as the Jews who hated them, because by saying what you say, "I don't need that," you are judging him. And you are, for yourself, killing him to yourself, because you're refusing to do what will give you life. And those who are filled with God and have ceased from sin, I will tell you, are a threat to today's so-called church, because we don't follow the status quo. "Oh, I sinned again. Oh, forgive me. Oh, I sinned again. Oh, forgive me. Oh, I sinned again. I forgive me. Oh, forgive me, Lord." He doesn't even hear the prayers of sinners. He will hear this one prayer: "Oh, Lord, forgive me. Fill me with you. Raise me from the deadness of my sin and fill me with your light." That one he'll listen to. He did with me. John 11:49, "But one of them, one of the Jews, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, 'You know nothing at all, nor do you take into account that it is expedient, that is better, for you that one man die for the people, and that the whole nation not perish.'" Now, he said this not on his own initiative, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation. They knew they planned to kill him, but this was different. He knew that Jesus was going to die not because they were accusing him of being a blasphemer, but for the nation. Now, Caiaphas was against Jesus and hated Jesus, but God can use even a donkey to prophesy. And he was in the position of high priest, so God gave him this to say. So in 51, he was going to die for the nation, and 52, and not for the nation only, but in order that he might also gather into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. That's the ones who are not Jewish. 53, so from that day on, they planned together to kill him. So he said, "Oh, he's going to die for the nation." Caiaphas, high priest, he's going to die for the nation. So let's kill him because he's a threat to us. Therefore, in 54, Jesus no longer continued to walk publicly among the Jews, but went away from there to the country near the wilderness, into a city called Ephraim, and there he stayed with the disciples. Why did he leave? He just left. Nobody came after him. Why? His hour had not yet come. John 11:55, now the Passover of the Jews was near, and many went up to Jerusalem out of the country before the Passover to purify themselves. 56, so they were seeking for Jesus and were saying to one another as they stood in the temple, "What do you think? That he will not come to the feast at all?" 57, now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was to report it, so they might seize him. So this was Jesus Christ's final Passover on the earth. The Jews were hunting him down. They wanted anyone to squeal on where he was so they could go and arrest him. They wanted to kill him, but Roman law, which they were under, said they couldn't. They would have to turn him over to the Romans, and they would judge him and kill him for them. But they killed him. They had it all planned out. They were going to get rid of this guy. Even though they knew he had just raised Lazarus from the dead. No one had ever done that in the history of anything. When will you believe? What will it take? My exhortation is this. I tell you the truth. You must repent and turn to him. Repentance is not, oh, I'm sorry, Lord. It's saying, I want to be free from sin. I want you to resurrect me from the deadness of my sin. And I want you to fill me with your life. That is repentance. Do you deny that Jesus came to do just that in you? You do if you say, I don't need that. If you reject it, you reveal you do not love him, because those who love him obey him. The Father says, if you do not love him, my son, if you do not love Jesus, he does not love you. If you disobey him, you do not love him. So, as a result of you disobeying him, you cannot reveal the glory of God through yourself. And you cannot glorify Jesus Christ through yourself. And that is your very purpose here. That is the purpose-driven life. His life in you, resurrected from the deadness of your sin. That's what it's all about. I pray you would see it. I pray you would turn. Do not judge him, or he will judge you. Lord Jesus, may there be many who see that by saying they don't need what you say they must have, who see that by that they are judging you. Lord, may they turn to you and obey you. I pray it in your name. Amen.
The fields are white and the workers are few, but the Lord of the harvest is faithful and true. He'll send forth more workers